So what is the ideal human diet? I mean, if you're watching this video, it's probable you've Googled that and come upon this, or maybe you just saw it in my feed and thought, oh my God, I'm dying to know. And over the decades, at least that I've been alive, there have been so many different theories on this. So you've heard everything from cutting out a macronutrient, right? So a macronutrient, protein, fat, carbs. We've seen every variation of this. We've seen diets that cut out carbs, diets that cut out animal protein, diets that have all three of these things. We've seen fasts, we've seen cleanses, we've seen things like eat organs for optimal health. I mean, we've seen it all. And there are certain things that apply to everyone. You realize we are 99.9999999% genetically identical, okay? So these are the rules that apply to all of us. Number one, you cannot overeat. You know this, I've told you this a bunch of times. I don't care how high a quality your food is. Your food has units of energy, right, in the form of calories. If we eat too much energy, more than we burn in a day, you will store those units of energy as fat. And what stored fat does in the body is bad, right? It can get stuck in our organs, or essentially stored in our organs. That's called ectopic fat. It disrupts our endocrine system, so it causes all kinds of bad health conditions in the body. We know this. We lose 40,000 Americans a month to obesity-related health conditions. 7 in 10 Americans are on drugs for obesity-related health conditions, and an obesity-related health condition is the #1 cause of bankruptcy in our country. So obesity, bad, and it doesn't matter how healthy the food is. If we're eating too much of it and we're sedentary, eventually we will start to accumulate fat, right? And I've just established that that does a host of things we don't want in the body, so it's not healthy for anybody. Now, what else remains true? Oh, my bird said hi, sweetie. Sorry, we had to cut that out. I just had a full conversation with the bird. Hopefully that's over now. So the next thing that applies to everybody is eating crap that isn't food. This is just bad for you, period. So fake foods, fake sugars, heavily processed foods, hormones, antibiotics, pesticides, herbicides, all of this garbage is not food. So it can affect your metabolism, which means how many calories our bodies burn in a day, negatively. Now, over time, that can have an impact. So it can make us more prone to being overweight. And it screws up our microbiome, which can make us more prone to being overweight. I'll come back to that microbiome thing in a second, okay? But the bottom line is, we don't want to eat crap. We don't want to eat stuff that isn't food. That applies to all humans. So eating whole foods in their most whole and unprocessed form, as organic as possible, is ideal for everybody. Ideal. So not overeating, okay? Not eating garbage. That is ideal. Now, okay, protein, fat, and carbs. Is there an ideal ratio of protein, fat, and carbs we should all be eating? Now, I've done other videos on keto and being vegan, and I have explained to you how pulling out macronutrients can create imbalances in the body, right? So we're not going to reiterate that. The best way to proceed is to be an omnivore, is to eat a little bit of meat, really clean meat, right? So grass-fed organic beef, maybe once a month, once every 2 weeks. Some wild-caught salmon for the omega-3s, once a week, once every 2 weeks, if you don't want to eat a ton of meat, right? Maybe some organic eggs a couple times a week. Some chicken or some turkey once a week. You don't have to eat a ton of it. Lots of fruits and veggies, whole grains, legumes, and some healthy fats, right? Polyunsaturated, monounsaturated fats. Saturated fats aren't the end of the world, but we don't want a ton of them. And there have been studies that have linked an overabundance of animal fat and animal protein to a shorter lifespan. There are a host of reasons for that, but the bottom line is we don't need a ton of that. And if you're not overeating, you won't get a ton of animal fat and a ton of animal protein. Okay. We've also seen that creating a 12-hour fast window, 12 to 16-hour fast window overnight, helps all human beings improve autophagy, which is where your body culls dead and senescent tissue. So that's good. We want that, right? When we're constantly eating, even if it's the same amount of food, if we eat regularly throughout the entire day, it slows down the body's ability to get into that process of autophagy or apoptosis, where it gets rid of all the dead tissue, gets it out, or reuses it, right? Recycles it. That applies to all people. Now, here's where this gets actually interesting. We have seen a different insulin response for different individuals, even if the food's the same. So here's why this is important. Elevated blood sugar levels disrupt your hormone balance, which has an effect on your overall health and well-being, as well as your metabolism. What does that mean? Think type 2 diabetes. What's happening? You're becoming insulin resistant. Insulin gets released when we eat foods that release sugar into the blood, right? But when you eat a ton of sugar or foods that turn into sugar quickly, then we get a huge surge of insulin and the body can become insulin resistant. Now, elevated blood sugar levels have been linked with all kinds of health problems, from erectile dysfunction to blurred vision. It essentially causes hardening of the arteries. Bad, no good, and a host of other problems. Bad for everyone. However, different foods will affect the way a person processes this food, breaks it down, metabolizes it, and the rate in which they release this food into the body. So years ago, I actually wrote this book, I think in 2008, right, called Making the Cut. And I looked at, based on all the studies that I'd read and the medical researchers I worked with on the book had read, at how we break our food down into sugar at a different pace. So at the time we called it oxidizer types, how quickly you oxidize your food and turn it into energy in the body. So we essentially broke it down into slow, balanced, and fast. And then we shifted the macronutrient ratio, and I say myself and the registered dietitians and the biochemists I worked with, to help you identify what was the best ratio of macros. Like, should you be 30, 30, 40, like the zone diet, 40 carbs, 30 fat, 30 protein? Or should you do more protein, less carbs? What's gonna be better for you? Why does it matter? Well, first of all we're gonna accomplish is we're gonna help you feel satiated, fuller for longer on the same amount of calories if that ratio is tweaked accordingly. So overall, you'll be eating less, and also it helps to stabilize blood sugar. So now here's the question. If we're genetically damn near the same, why are we breaking down different foods, or even the same foods, differently, right? So we've looked at two identical twins and fed them the same foods, and their insulin response has been different. Genetically identical twins, why? Microbiome is the key. So your microbiome are all those little bugs living in your gut, right? All those little microbes. And those little microbes are so powerful, we're starting to understand that they affect everything from our immunity to our metabolism, to the way we age, to how we digest our food and break down and absorb our nutrients. Like, it's unbelievably, overwhelmingly fascinating stuff, okay? And I'll do a separate video on how you can care for and cultivate a healthy microbiome. But how do you know, right, with regard to what microbiome you're working with, what foods are best for you? And again, why does it matter? So all the rules still apply. You're still not overeating. You're still not eating chemicals and fake garbage. You're still ideally taking a 12 to 16 overnight fast window. But if you want to get a little crazy, you can pay attention to a few things. So first of all, I have a little quiz in this book. Take it out from the library, and it asks you a bunch of questions that teach you to listen to your body and how you feel after you eat certain foods to help you identify what your best macronutrient ratio might be. So for example, when you eat fruit for breakfast, you feel lightheaded, starving, satiated, right? Looking at the way these foods are making you feel. So you can get the book, you can take it out for free. In fact, you know what I'll do? I'll do a blog and post it on JillianMichaels.com with the oxidizer test, and it'll be up by the time you watch this video, so you can take it and try to figure out what's an ideal macronutrient ratio. Yes, thank you, Ross. However, another thing that you can do, right? You can even go to a drugstore and get one of those little glucose tests for diabetics and see how different foods that you eat regularly are affecting your blood sugar, and it might surprise you. You might think, oh, brown rice is going to be so good, it's a whole grain, but it might make your insulin levels surge, which isn't good. And you might notice that when you eat beans or legumes, that your blood sugar is lower. So that would be a better choice for you, right? So that's really the only factor of diet that's personal, is how quickly we break food down. And the reason it's relevant is because of how it affects our blood sugar, and how our blood sugar is impacted is going to play a role in our overall health and your hunger, right? If your blood sugar is crashing, surging all day long, it's going to mess up your appetite. It can cause you to overeat and a ton of stuff. So do me a favor, go check out this oxidizer test, take it, and start to pay attention to how your body feels when you're eating certain foods. And you can get a very literal and concrete answer by taking one of those little blood sugar tests to see how your body responds to different foods. But the rules of the game remain the same. I'm gonna say it one more time. We don't overeat, we don't eat crap, and you can incorporate a 12 to 16 hour fast window overnight for optimal health and longevity.